Hello there, everyone. This is Bob Sapdagger, and I think before I get started with this Bioshock trilogy playthrough, let's play, I want to talk a bit first about my thoughts on the entire series. Let's start with Bioshock 1. Or, actually, before we do that, let's start with my taste in video games. I think this is important to help explain my thoughts on the games where they differ to the consensus, let's say. I am an extremely mechanics focused gamer. A good story is entertaining, good visuals are entertaining, a good soundtrack is entertaining, but to me, that's just icing on the cake. That's just the candles, that's just the wrapping. What matters to me is the cake itself. I am the guy who, when he gets a cupcake, he takes off the candle, takes off the wrapping, and scrapes off all the icing and just eats the cake. Because that's what I care about. The meat of the game. The gameplay loop, which in the case of all the Bioshock games, is the combat. With that out of the way, let's actually talk about Bioshock 1. Bioshock 1 is a great game. Let's just get that out of the way right now. This is a great game. But I don't think it's as good as a lot of people's nostalgia make it out to be. I think that a lot of people get so lost in the huge twist that, and I guess the atmosphere of the game, that they forget, that they just kind of ignore some of the problems. Look, the twist ain't that good. It's not that good of a twist. Okay, there's gonna be some spoiler. There's gonna be a lot of spoilers here. I'm gonna have spoiler alerts all over this all over the title and the description of this video. But Andrew Ryan being your dad doesn't make any fucking sense. So Fontaine kidnaps you, raises you somewhere on the surface, then has you come back and just prays to whatever he believes in that you are able to survive. Because if he thought that Andrew Ryan would immediately recognize that you're his son and not kill you, he lost that fucking bet by a mile. It's a stupid twist. And the entire last part of the game, after Fontaine reveals or after Atlas reveals that he's Fontaine, the entire last act is just this cavalcade of just shit happening. Another problem with the game is the character models look like ass. They look horrendous. They look like, if you remember Brink, that kind of plasticky, hyper-exaggerated style, they look like that if you just took a shit on it. They look awful. Luckily, all the character models are either in the dark, illustrated by, well, an illustration while they're talking to you through the shortwave radio or through an audio diary, or you're just blowing their heads off anyway. So it doesn't really matter, but when you actually do get a good sight of some of the terrible character models, it does ruin the game. Or at least it ruins my immersion in the game. Finally, I don't think that the weapons feel as good as they could. Some of the weapons feel great. The shotgun feels great. The grenade launcher feels good. But the wrench, the pistol, and even the submachine gun, the Tommy gun, just don't feel... They're missing just a bit more oomph. They got a lot there, they just need a... They got a lot going for them, they just need a bit more. Also, the whole ethical dilemma, saving versus harvesting, it's not tacked on or bad. I just feel like there's more they could have done with it. Because if you harvest the little girls, then the very last part of the game where Tana saves you, it just kind of feels like it feels like it comes out of nowhere even more. Whereas if you save them, it actually does make more sense. Just not a lot of sense. So, but don't let that mean that I think BioShock 1 is a bad game. To rate it, I would give it a 7 out of 10. It's a great game. But I don't think it's the legend that some people would make it out to be. Now let's move on to BioShock 2. I'm just gonna leave it up here. Sorry. Let's move on to BioShock 2. BioShock 2... Okay, remember why I was saying... Remember why I was explaining my taste in games? That's because all of you who say that BioShock 2 is the worst game in the series, you're fucking wrong. You are wrong. This is the best game in the series. Why? Because this game dispenses with all of the ridiculous, overhyped, and kind of pretentious story. It still has a story, and it's honestly not a good one. It's a really simple one when you boil it down. Some bitch took your daughter, you gotta go get her back. But you know what? It makes up for it but with the gameplay. The gameplay is so much better. It's not even better in like very noticeable ways, but the tweaks, the sharpness, they made enough minute changes that everything comes together to feel so much better. I'll get into some more detail about it. The hacking pipe minigame is gone. There's still just as much hacking, and I would argue there's even more hacking, but it's fast. It's a quick little minigame, and it's done. It's not the pipe minigame bullshit that, if you're on hard mode, fucks you over all the time. The tonics system is redone to where you don't have all these different categories of tonics. You just have a big have a big warehouse of tonics that you can slot. It's simpler. It may not be as complex, but it's simpler, and it gets the job done. In fact, it gets the job done better, because that means there's not going to be this one tonic selection that's full of useless ass tonics. You can fill your entire tonic slot with you can fill all your tonic slots with useful tonics. The guns feel better. All of them feel good. They need some upgrades to make them usable, like the machine gun is absolutely useless until you get the recoil reduction, but they all feel good. Even the rivet gun, which at the later levels is only useful if you're using heavy rivets, even it feels good. And honestly, even with heavy rivets, it still can do some damage. The fact that they give you weapon upgrades so much earlier in the game feels good. Now, if I didn't like the ethics system in Bioshock 1, it's absolutely tacked on in Bioshock 2. There is no reason that makes any sense that your character would harvest the little sisters. But you can, because you could do that in the previous game, so whatever. I would give Bioshock 2 an 8 out of 10. Because it's better. It's better than Bioshock 1 in every way that matters to me. And now that I'm done being an edgelord, let's become an even edgier edgelord. Bioshock Infinite. This is the worst game in the series. Okay, the story is just icing on the cake to me. All I care about is the gameplay. But if an icing tastes like shit, then that's gonna rub off on the cake. This story is dog shit. It is awful. The writing is awful. Booker is the most cliched fucking bullshit character in the world. Elizabeth is just non-existent. She is not a human being. She is just some fanficky Mary Sue bullshit character. Comstock is just if Sophia Lamb was an evil cartoon in Bioshock 2, then Comstock is Dr. Evil. He is a parody of villains. And the ending, fuck you. Fuck you people for liking that ending. Here's why you should never ever do an ending like that. When you introduce the concept of multiverse theory, when you introduce multiple universes, the game has no more weight. Because every time something happens, instead of thinking, oh shit, this got real, what I'm thinking is, now what's that like in another universe? What happens when blah blah blah? What happens when A equals B and not A instead of A equaling A? Or what happens when A equals C? You see what I mean? And that ending was just a bunch of lazy bullshit. Sorry. Let's actually get into what I like about Bioshock Infinite, which is the gameplay. The gameplay feels really good. In fact, the gameplay is why I can actually stand to play that game and enjoy myself. When there's no talking, when there's no story, when it's just me killing bad guys in that game, it feels great. Even if I hate that I can only equip 2 weapons at a time, it still feels good. The vigors, while there's less of them, they fit perfectly in your loop, in your rhythm of combat. I still like the wider selection of plasmids in the bioshock in the first two, but the vigors, I get what they were going for. They fit perfectly. And if they would just let you carry every gun, the gameplay would be damn near perfect. But they don't. And instead of having exploration, they just have Elizabeth throw you ammo, health, and salt. Which is what this game makes me. Salty. And then the very last fight in the game is so shitty. I hate when a game, instead of giving you a real boss fight, just throws everything at you. I hate it in Bioshock 2 as well. But in Bioshock 2, at least you're not defending stuff. It doesn't become a defend mission or an escort quest, whatever you want to call it. In Bioshock Infinite, you have to protect these generators or whatever, and it's so annoying. Who thought that was a good idea? Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. To give an actual rating to all of this, I would give Bioshock Infinite a 6. It would get a much lower rating if the combat was not so on point. With all that being said, let's actually get to this Let's Play.